My name is Natalie Brooks. I am 37 years old. If someone had told me that a single sentence could destroy an entire family, I would never have believed them, until my daughter's 8th birthday. Emma stood outside the restaurant wearing the yellow dress she had chosen 2 months earlier. In her hands was a small, handmade card decorated with colored paper. Every few minutes, she glanced toward the parking lot and smiled hopefully. Mom, Grandma, and Grandpa are coming, right? Natalie nodded softly. At least, she thought they were. After all, her parents were the ones who had promised they would be the first to arrive. The party began. Children laughed and played. Music filled the room. Balloons swayed gently beneath the lights, but the 2 chairs reserved for Emma's grandparents remained empty. 30 minutes passed. Then an hour. Emma was still sitting there. The card in her hands had become wrinkled from being squeezed too tightly. Finally, Natalie stepped into the hallway and made the call. 3 times, no one answered. On the 4th call, her father finally picked up. His voice was cold, as if he were speaking to a stranger. Natalie asked why they had not arrived. There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. Then he answered, "Why would we come?" Natalie froze. "It's Emma's birthday." He sighed. "Emma is not the one who carries on this family's name. She is not part of our real bloodline." Every sound around her seemed to disappear. Natalie stood motionless in the hallway. Each word felt like a blade slowly cutting through whatever remained of their family bond. Then he continued, "You have your own life now. Jason is our real family." Jason, her younger brother, the perfect son in their eyes ever since he was a child, the one who never had to prove himself, the one who was always chosen first, at every dinner, every holiday, every important decision. Natalie could not even remember how the call ended. She only remembered walking back into the party and seeing Emma trying to smile. "Mom, maybe Grandma and Grandpa were just busy?" Natalie felt her throat tighten. Emma was only 8 years old. Yet she was already learning how to make excuses for people who hurt her, just like Natalie had done for years. The party ended earlier than planned. After putting Emma to bed, Natalie sat alone in her home office. A computer screen glowed in front of her. Outside the window, the city of Charlotte shimmered beneath the night lights. Inside the room, the truth slowly began to reveal itself. Natalie opened an old folder, then another, then dozens more. Numbers stretched across the screen. Transfers, invoices, contracts. For nearly a decade, her parents had never truly kept their furniture business alive through their own efforts. The person who kept that business standing was Natalie. Whenever the store ran out of cash, she paid. Whenever tax penalties arrived, she paid. Whenever employees needed salaries, she paid. Whenever the bank demanded money, she paid. No one knew. No one was told. Even many relatives believed her parents were successful, self-made business owners. Natalie had always told herself she did it out of love. But that night, for the first time, she looked at everything through different eyes. She was not a daughter. She was a source of income. An ATM disguised as family. The more she thought about it, the more old memories returned. The day she graduated at the top of her class, her parents never showed up. The day she bought her first house, they only asked how much it was worth. The day Emma was born, they stayed less than an hour before leaving for Jason's birthday celebration. The signs had always been there. Natalie simply refused to see them. The clock was approaching midnight. She logged into the business banking account. The cursor stopped over a single line. Store Operations Support Fund, the account her parents had depended on for years. Natalie's fingers trembled slightly. Not because she was afraid, because she suddenly realized she was standing in front of a door that could never be closed again. If she clicked confirm, everything would change. If she clicked confirm, for the first time in her life, she would stop rescuing people who had never once rescued her. Natalie looked at the photo of Emma sitting on her desk. Her daughter was smiling, the same bright smile her parents had decided was not important enough to show up for. Natalie took a deep breath. Then she clicked confirm. A notification appeared on the screen. Completed. The room remained silent. No thunder, no dramatic music, just a woman sitting quietly in the darkness. But somewhere in the city, an empire built with her money had just begun to shake. And the next morning, When Natalie's parents discovered what she had done, they would finally understand a truth they had never considered. The person they had underestimated the most was the very one holding the entire foundation beneath their feet. The next morning, Natalie was making breakfast for Emma when her phone began to vibrate. 1 call, then 2, then 5. Less than 10 minutes later, her screen showed more than 20 missed calls. Every single one was from her parents. Natalie did not answer. She calmly placed a plate of pancakes in front of Emma. Her daughter continued chatting happily about a craft project at school. That was exactly what strengthened Natalie's resolve. For years, she had sacrificed her own peace to satisfy people who never knew when enough was enough. But her daughter would not grow up living that way. As soon as Emma arrived at school, the phone rang again. This time, it was the manager of the furniture store. The man's voice was trembling. "Natalie, the payment system isn't working anymore. Suppliers are holding our orders. The bank called this morning too." Natalie answered softly, "I understand." That was all. No explanation. No apology. No rescue, the way she always had before. By noon, a post appeared on her mother's Facebook page, an old family photo taken years earlier. Beneath it was a long, emotional message. "Some children become successful and forget everything their parents sacrificed for them. We're getting older. We only wanted to be loved." Hundreds of likes appeared. Sympathetic comments poured in. Natalie read the post and closed the screen. She knew this game far too well. Her mother never told the whole story. She only told the part that made herself look like the victim. Later that afternoon, a phone call from Emma's school sent a chill through Natalie's body. The teacher's voice was serious. "There's something we think you should know." Natalie immediately stood up. "What happened?" "This morning, a woman came to pick Emma up early. She said you were experiencing mental health problems and had asked her to take Emma home." Natalie's heart began pounding. Who was it? Emma's grandmother. The room suddenly felt silent. Fortunately, the school had refused because there was no parental authorization. But before leaving, the woman had pressured staff members and raised her voice inside the office. Natalie sat frozen. Until that moment, she had believed her parents were simply angry about losing their financial support. Now she understood the situation was much more serious. They did not want money. They wanted control. That same afternoon, Natalie met with her attorney. He had helped her with several business transactions in the past. After listening to the entire story, he remained silent for a long time. Finally, he opened a file and asked a question. "Did you know that on paper, most of the store's assets are actually backed by your company?" Natalie looked up. "What do you mean?" He slid a stack of documents across the table. For years, whenever the store ran into trouble, her parents had used Natalie's financial reputation to secure loans. If the business collapsed, the person who would suffer the greatest loss was not them. It was her. A cold sensation ran down her spine. At that exact moment, her phone lit up with a message from someone she had not spoken to in years. Rachel, the cousin the entire family used to call the rebellious child. Natalie remembered clearly. Every time Rachel's name came up, her parents would shake their heads in disappointment. "Don't turn out like her." That was what they always said. The message contained only one sentence. "I think you're finally going through what they did to me." Natalie called her immediately. The conversation lasted nearly an hour, and with every passing minute, her world changed. Rachel explained that years ago, she had helped Natalie's parents pay off debts. At first, it was only a few $1,000s. Then the amounts grew larger. When Rachel finally refused to continue, the family suddenly turned against her. They told people she had a substance abuse problem. They said she was unstable. They claimed she had betrayed the family. Natalie sat speechless. It was exactly what was happening to her now. Rachel sent over a folder. Inside were emails, receipts, text messages, copies of financial transactions spanning many years. A pattern emerged, clear and terrifying. Any relative who became successful eventually became a target. First came love, then guilt, then money, and finally, control. Natalie stared at the screen for a long time. For the first time in her life, she understood why Rachel had disappeared from the family. Not because Rachel was a bad person, but because Rachel had seen the truth too early. At exactly 6 o'clock that evening, the doorbell rang. A man in a suit stood outside. He handed Natalie an envelope, a legal notice. Her parents were officially demanding financial support based on economic dependency and emotional hardship. Natalie read every line. She was not angry. She did not cry. She only felt a strange sense of calm. Because at last, every mask had fallen away. This battle had never been about family. It had always been about money. She placed the envelope on the table. Then she picked up her phone and called her attorney. Her voice was calmer than it had ever been. "They want to bring this into the light, don't they?" the attorney answered. "It certainly looks that way." Natalie glanced at the photograph of Emma sitting on the bookshelf. Her expression hardened. "Then this time, I'm going to let everyone see the entire truth." 1 week after receiving the legal notice from her parents, Natalie Brooks walked into her attorney's conference room carrying 3 storage boxes filled with documents. No one in the room said a word as she placed them on the table. Each box contained a piece of her life. Years of exhausting work. Money quietly transferred away. Sacrifices no one had ever known about. The attorney opened the first box. Inside were bank statements. The second box contained loan agreements. The third was filled with emails, text messages, and business records. After nearly an hour of reviewing everything, he finally looked up. "Natalie, do you know how many times you've saved that business?" She shook her head. He slid a stack of papers across the table. 13 times. Natalie remained silent. 13 times in less than a decade. Without her financial support, the furniture store would have collapsed years ago. But the biggest shock was waiting on the final page. A major loan agreement signed several years earlier. The guarantor was not her parents. It was Natalie. She stared at her own signature. It was genuine, but no one had ever explained the full details of the agreement to her. At the time, her father had simply said they needed a few documents to complete bank paperwork. Natalie had signed because she trusted him. Now she finally understood how deeply she had been used. Meanwhile, outside the courtroom, the story was beginning to spread. A local journalist named Michael Turner contacted Natalie's attorney. At first, he assumed it was just another family dispute. But the deeper he investigated, the more unusual details he uncovered. Several suppliers refused to comment. A few former employees unexpectedly agreed to meet with him. What they revealed painted an entirely different picture. One former manager explained that the store had repeatedly come close to bankruptcy, yet somehow, every time disaster seemed unavoidable, money appeared. No one knew where it came from. A former accounting employee revealed that Natalie's name frequently appeared in internal financial records, yet her contributions were never acknowledged. To the community, her parents still appeared to be self-made business owners who had built everything on their own. Then the first hearing finally arrived. The courtroom was not large, yet nearly every seat was occupied. Natalie's parents sat on the opposite side. Her mother constantly wiped away tears. Her father maintained a stern expression. Anyone unfamiliar with the truth would have believed they were 2 elderly parents abandoned by an ungrateful daughter. Their attorney stood first. He described Natalie as a successful woman who had turned her back on her family after becoming wealthy. He spoke about suffering, about gratitude, about a daughter's responsibility. Several people in the room nodded in agreement. Then it was Natalie's turn. She did not stand immediately. Instead, her attorney stepped forward. He placed a thick file on the table. Then another. Then another. Altogether, nearly 1,000 pages of evidence. Bank statements. Receipts. Emails. Contracts. Text messages. One by one, the documents appeared on the courtroom screen, month after month, year after year, without interruption. Money flowed continuously from Natalie to her parents' business. Not for 1 year, not for 2, but for nearly an entire decade. Whispers spread throughout the room, yet the biggest revelation was still coming. The attorney pressed a button and played an audio recording. Her father's voice filled the courtroom. "You owe us everything. Without us, you'd be nothing." The entire room fell silent. There was no love in that voice, no gratitude, only power, only control. Natalie looked across the room at her parents. For the first time in her life, she was no longer afraid of them. Because the truth was standing in the middle of that courtroom, and no one could erase it. Then another bombshell surfaced. Michael Turner had just completed his independent investigation. His first article was published that same afternoon. One detail immediately captured public attention. While continuously demanding financial support from Natalie, her parents had spent tens of thousands of dollars on luxury vacations, beach resorts, upscale retreats, extravagant travel expenses. Nothing about their spending resembled a family struggling financially. Then another name appeared. Jason. The perfect son. The golden child. The future of the family. According to financial records, Jason had received substantial transfers from the business for years, yet he had never contributed anything in return. No investments, no financial support, no responsibility. He simply received. For the first time, people began asking questions. If Natalie was truly the one destroying the family, why had she been the only person keeping them afloat for all those years? When the hearing finally ended, Natalie stepped outside the courthouse. Dozens of reporters were waiting, cameras turned toward her. Microphones were extended in her direction. One reporter called out loudly, "Do you regret stopping your support for your parents?" Natalie paused. The late afternoon sunlight reflected off the glass buildings behind her. She thought for a few seconds. Then she answered calmly, "I didn't stop helping them." She paused. "I simply stopped allowing them to use me." Suddenly, the entire area fell quiet, because everyone understood what she meant. The battle had changed. And for the first time in many years, the person holding the power was no longer Natalie's parents. It was the daughter they had spent a lifetime underestimating. After the first hearing, everything changed faster than Natalie Brooks had ever imagined. For years, her parents had relied on one thing above all else, their reputation. They had always presented themselves as devoted parents, the kind of people who sacrificed everything for their children, the kind of people respected throughout the community. But now, the first cracks had begun to appear, and those cracks spread quickly. 3 days after the article was published, Natalie's phone was flooded with messages. The criticism was gone. The accusations had disappeared. This time, people were apologizing. An aunt from another state called her. Her voice trembled with emotion. "Natalie, I didn't know the truth. Your mother told us you had abandoned them years ago." Natalie looked out the window. The afternoon sky was filled with soft sunlight. She no longer felt angry, only tired. A deep exhaustion that had followed her for years. She sent her aunt everything, the transfers, the invoices, the evidence. 2 hours later, her aunt called back. This time she was crying. Not because of Natalie's parents, because of Natalie. The next day, another relative reached out, then another, and another. Slowly, the fog began to lift. The stories her parents had told for years were finally being exposed. But once they lost sympathy, they turned to something else, desperation. One morning, Natalie woke up and found her name spreading across social media. Her mother had posted a lengthy message. She portrayed herself as the victim. She wrote about pain, about betrayal, about an ungrateful daughter. But this time, things did not go the way she expected. There were no longer hundreds of supportive comments underneath. People started asking questions. Some shared the investigative article. Others posted screenshots of publicly available documents. Control was slipping away from her parents, and they knew it. 2 days later, Natalie's attorney officially filed a defamation lawsuit. Everything was almost over. Until one night, the clock was approaching midnight. A message appeared from an unfamiliar number. Natalie opened it. There was only a single sentence. "We never thought you would leave." It was from her father. Natalie stared at the screen for a long time. Years ago, a message like that would have made her cry. It would have been enough to pull her back, enough to make her sacrifice herself all over again. But now things were different, because she finally understood something. Her father was not grieving the loss of a daughter. He was grieving the loss of control. Natalie locked her phone. No reply, no argument, no explanation, just quiet silence. And for the first time in her life, that silence no longer felt painful. It felt like freedom. A few weeks later, the final ruling arrived. The court approved protective measures for Natalie and Emma. The harassment had to stop. The false statements had to be removed. Everything moved surprisingly fast. There was no dramatic confrontation. No screaming. No triumphant victory speech. Just doors quietly closing one after another. Silently. Permanently. Late one summer afternoon, Natalie was cleaning out an old storage space in her house. Inside a dusty box, she discovered a yellowed envelope. The handwriting on the front looked familiar. It belonged to her grandmother, the only person in the family who had ever loved her without conditions. Natalie opened the letter. Inside were only a few short lines. If one day you must choose between pleasing everyone and protecting yourself, choose yourself. The people who truly love you will never ask you to pay for that love. Natalie read the words again and again. Then she began to cry. Not from pain, from relief. It felt as though someone had finally told her she had never been wrong. That evening, she took Emma to the beach. The two of them sat together on the sand, watching the sun slowly sink below the horizon. A gentle ocean breeze drifted past them. Emma rested her head against her mother's shoulder. After a few moments of silence, she looked up. "Mom?" Natalie smiled. "Yes, sweetheart?" Emma thought for a few seconds. Then she asked quietly, "We're okay now, right?" Natalie gazed out across the ocean. The waves continued rolling toward shore, just as they always had. Some things come and go. Some things must be lost, so something better can take their place. She wrapped her arm around her daughter. For the first time in many years, her heart felt completely at peace. "Yes, we're okay now." She smiled softly. "Actually, we're better than okay, because I finally understand something. Family isn't made up of people who keep you trapped with guilt. Family is made up of people who help you grow through love." The sun slowly disappeared beyond the horizon. Emma smiled. Natalie smiled too. There were no more phone calls to wait for. No more approval to chase. No more emotional debts to repay. Only a mother and daughter moving forward together. And somewhere far behind them, the voices that had haunted Natalie for most of her life slowly faded into silence.